You are on the What I Never Saw channel. Enjoy watching.
I wasn't even supposed to pick up the dry cleaning that Thursday. That was Kayla's job. She liked doing it. Said it gave her a reason to stop by that overpriced juice bar next to the cleaners and decompress between work and errands. But that morning, she ****ed me a text that just read, "Crazy day. Can you grab the clothes after work?" Yellow heart. I told her sure. It was nothing. I left the office around 6, drove over to Brightfold Cleaners, and gave them our usual phone number. The kid behind the counter handed me a clear plastic-wrapped bundle of hangers. 2 of mine, my charcoal suit and a button-down, and 2 of hers. That's what I thought. Anyway, it wasn't until I got home and laid everything across the bed that something felt off. One of the items wasn't anything I recognized. It was a lavender jacket, short, fitted, with these soft, ribbed sleeves and gold detailing on the zipper. It definitely wasn't Kayla's. I knew her wardrobe like I knew my own. She liked soft neutrals, blacks, and deep greens, structured silhouettes. This thing looked like it belonged to someone who went on wine retreats and posted daily affirmations. I picked it up like it might disappear in my hands. It smelled faintly like jasmine, which somehow made me even more uncomfortable. Thinking the dry cleaner made a simple mix-up, I instinctively slid my hand into the pocket for a tag or receipt. That's when I found the note. Folded in half and a little crumpled, it looked like it had been carried around for a while. One side had a phone number. The other side was handwritten in clean, looping letters. "Sunsets aren't the same without you." I stared at it longer than I should have. Not because it was romantic, honestly, it was kind of cliché, but because it wasn't meant for me. And I had a gut feeling it was meant for someone close. I walked into the kitchen where Kayla was chopping vegetables barefoot, humming softly to herself. She had her sleeves rolled up, hair tied back, still in her pencil skirt from work. On the surface, nothing looked out of place. "Hey," I said, holding up the jacket. "You pick up a new coat I don't know about?" She glanced at it for half a second. Too quick. "Oh, that's not mine," she said, turning back to the cutting board. "That must be Serena's. From yoga. We probably mixed stuff up when we dropped our things off together." I didn't say anything at first. Just stood there. She kept chopping. "Serena?" I asked. "The tall one with the bangs?" She nodded. "Yeah. We always throw our jackets in the same pile after class. She probably slipped hers in with mine and didn't notice." Then she smiled, reassuring, casual. Too casual. I know my wife. I know how she talks when she's being honest. I know the rhythm of her voice, the pauses when she's trying to remember something real. And I know the difference between genuine and rehearsed. What I heard in that moment, that wasn't real. That was a script. I said nothing, just nodded, folded the note back up, and tucked it into the drawer where we keep stray receipts and expired coupons. No accusations. No drama. But my mind didn't quiet down. After dinner, she poured herself a glass of red wine and curled up on the couch, scrolling through her phone. I sat beside her, pretending to read something on my laptop. Her face was calm, focused. But I caught it, the way her thumb hovered over one notification a little too long before clearing it. The way she turned the screen just slightly away from me. It was subtle. But once you notice one lie, everything starts looking like a red flag. I couldn't stop thinking about that note. The handwriting didn't look rushed. It looked thoughtful. Someone took the time to write it out, fold it, tuck it into a pocket. I kept picturing the moment. A hand sliding it in, a jacket being returned, someone missing someone else at sunset. None of that sounded like Serena from yoga. The next morning, I called Brightfold, just out of curiosity. "Hey," I said to the same kid who'd helped me. "There was a jacket in our order that isn't ours. Lavender, kind of cropped, gold zipper. Could have been someone else's?" He didn't miss a beat. "Oh yeah," he said. "Actually, I think your wife brought that one in." I blinked. "You sure?" "Yeah, she came in on Tuesday. Had a bunch of stuff. That jacket was definitely with her order. Want us to set it aside?" I told him no, we'd figure it out. And I hung up without another word. Now I had 2 conflicting stories, one from Kayla, one from the kid at the cleaners. and both couldn't be true. That night I brought it up again. So, the jacket. Brightfold said you brought it in yourself. She barely looked up. Yeah, with Serena's stuff. I must have not realized it was mixed in. No big deal, babe. She was still using the Serena story, still smiling like I was overthinking it. But her eyes shifted just a second too late. Her voice pitched just a touch too high. I said nothing. Again. But something had already shifted. It wasn't the coat. It wasn't even the note. It was the instinct. That quiet, low hum in the back of your brain that starts up when something's wrong. That hum was now a steady vibration in my chest. Kayla and I have been married 6 years. We met in grad school. She was sharp, ambitious, head-turning in a room full of chaos. We used to argue about nothing just for fun, who was better, Sorkin or Fincher, whether Sundays were for rest or productivity. But somewhere along the way, the edges smoothed out. Lately, she was always tired, distant. Her laughter felt curated, her affection measured. And now this. I sat on the edge of the bed that night, watching her apply moisturizer in the mirror. She was wearing a silk robe I hadn't seen in months. Her routine was slower, more deliberate. She caught me watching and smiled. What? She asked, playful. You're staring. I shrugged. Just thinking. She turned back to the mirror, dabbing at her eyes. About what? I didn't answer, because I didn't know yet what I was thinking. But I knew this. Something had *N. Something quiet, subtle, like a shift in the weather before a storm you don't see yet. The jacket went back in the dry cleaning plastic. I left it hanging in the hallway closet. But I kept the note. I don't know why, maybe as a reminder. Or a warning. That was the night I started looking at things a little differently. Her new perfume. The fact that she never needed a ride from work anymore, when she used to love our shared commute. The weekend retreats that always came back with no pictures, no stories, just vague descriptions and a soft smile. I didn't jump to conclusions. Not yet. But I listened harder, watched closer, marked the little inconsistencies the way a detective might mark footprints in fresh snow. I wasn't ready to say anything, but I had started paying attention. And once you start, it's hard to stop. The jacket was never claimed. After a week of hanging in our hallway closet like some misplaced souvenir, I finally zipped it into a garment bag and tucked it behind my winter coats. I didn't ask Kayla about it again. She never brought it up. That's how it went with us now. Some conversations lived in the spaces between words, and some truths you learned to breathe around. But something had changed in me. I became watchful, not obsessive, not yet, but deliberate. Every detail suddenly felt heavier. Everything she did, everything she didn't, registered. Like how she stopped asking for rides. We used to carpool. Kayla worked midtown. I worked remote, but I'd still drive her most days. She used to joke that it was her luxury Uber with a side of unsolicited opinions. But around the same time as the dry cleaning incident, she started saying, "Don't worry, I'll get a ride," or "I've got a late meeting." Once or twice, sure. But it turned into a pattern. Then a rule. One day, out of habit, I showed up at her building around 6:30, waiting outside like I used to. She never came out. I texted, "Outside when you're ready." She replied 4 minutes later, "Oh shoot, I'm already on the train. Had to rush out early for a last-minute dinner thing. Sorry." But her tone was clipped. I could hear it through the text, like a line rehearsed. And then there was her phone. Kayla used to leave it lying around, kitchen counter, nightstand, charger in the hallway. She never guarded it. I never cared. But now, she kept it on her, always, face down during dinner, screen tilted away, and it vibrated constantly, soft little pulses she never acknowledged unless I wasn't looking. Her thumbs moved faster, shorter responses, fewer out-loud laughs, fewer explanations. One night I asked, jokingly, "You starting a second life in there?" She smiled, distracted, and said, "If I am, I'm doing a terrible job at hiding it." We both laughed. Only I didn't. She also started looking different. Not worse. Not tired. The opposite, actually. Glowing. For someone claiming to be exhausted by back-to-back client meetings, Kayla came home with fresh makeup. Not office makeup. Evening makeup. Defined lashes, shimmer on her cheeks, lipstick that still had crisp edges. I told myself maybe she just needed to feel put together. Maybe it made her feel better after a hard day. But that didn't explain the change in clothes. Heels after dark, dresses she hadn't worn in months. Even a new trench coat I never saw arrive. When I asked about it, she laughed and said, "You never notice anything until it's already been in my closet for 3 months. And then came the retreats. Kayla started going away more. Quick weekend getaways, she called. Spiritual resets. Art gallery trips with her studio friend Lila. One weekend it was a yoga retreat upstate. The next, an Airbnb in some seaside town with no cell service. At first, I encouraged it. She works hard. Everyone needs a break. But something didn't sit right. There were no photos. Not one. Kayla takes pictures of everything. Sunlight through curtains, matcha lattes, dogs wearing sweaters. But from these retreats, nothing. No tagged locations. No scenery. No people. No selfies. Just radio silence, followed by a Monday morning. It was exactly what I needed. Lila, when I ran into her outside a coffee shop, said something that twisted my stomach. "Oh, I haven't seen Kayla in forever," she said with a big smile. "Tell her to call me." She thought we were talking about brunch. She hadn't been on any weekend trips. That was when I stopped pretending things would explain themselves. I started digging. It began with small things, checking timestamps on her calendar invites, reading receipts on our shared Netflix account. Once, I noted that the back door opened at 1:47 a.m. on a Saturday when Kayla had said she was staying in a remote cabin, completely off-grid. It was our smart home app that told me that. It logs everything: door opens, motion lights, thermostat changes. I used to love that thing. Now it felt like a confession booth. That night I scrolled back weeks. There were other entries. Doors unlocking, lights turning on when no one was supposed to be home. Pattern was forming. I remember sitting there, in the dark, staring at that app like it was a Ouija board, trying to summon a version of reality that made sense. The worst part? I wanted to be wrong. I wanted to discover some boring, obvious explanation. I wanted to find proof she'd been telling the truth. But every time I chased a loose thread, it unraveled more. A scarf appeared on the coat rack. Plaid, Berg *NDY, not hers. I asked about it. She said she found it in the back of the closet. Then she tossed it into the donation box too fast. Her scent changed. The perfume she'd worn for years, soft, powdery, was replaced by something sharper, more expensive, with notes of sandalwood and citrus. She said it was a gift from a coworker. Said she wanted to try something new. Then one day I caught her humming a song I didn't know. I asked about it, and she said, "Oh, it's just a TikTok sound." But later I looked it up. It was a love song, something moody and nostalgic, about missed connections and secret meetings. And I realized I had no idea what her world looked like anymore. She was becoming someone else. Not all at once, but piece by piece. And I was starting to feel like a guest in my own marriage, watching a version of Kayla that moved slightly out of sync from the one I remembered. I never said the word affair. Not out loud. Not even to myself. But the silence between us started to feel occupied. Like there was someone else standing in the room with us. Invisible and ever-present. I didn't know his name. I didn't know his face. But I felt him. Felt his fingerprints on our routines. His laughter replacing mine in the corners of her smiles. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because something deeper had settled in me. A quiet strategy. I wanted truth, not theater. I didn't want her panicked denials or half-excuses. I wanted evidence. I wanted to know, beyond doubt, what I was dealing with. So I started documenting. Screensh *TS of smart lock entries. Notes about what she wore and said. Dates. Photos. I created a hidden folder on my computer titled Journal, Personal. Each entry was a breadcrumb. Each observation a small betrayal stitched into our daily life. I became methodical, detached. And beneath that detachment was something colder. Clarity. She was hiding something. Maybe not perfectly. Maybe not even intentionally. But she was. And I was done pretending not to see it. It stopped being suspicion the day I saw the lodge. I'd been tracking details, times, movements, changes, but it all still lived in the shadows. Until the app updated. That dumb car app we rarely used, tied to Kayla's SUV. She had logged in once on my phone a while back when she couldn't get hers to load. I hadn't touched it in over a year. One night, for reasons I couldn't explain, even to myself, I opened it. Just to check. Just to look. And there it was. Kayla's car, parked at a guest lodge by the coast. A place about 90 minutes away, on a cliffside road lined with cedar trees and empty beach homes. We had been there once on our 3rd anniversary. Back then, it was a romantic cliché. Wine on the deck, wool blankets by the fireplace. The sound of the ocean crashing just beyond the window. But she wasn't there with me now. And it wasn't just once. The app showed her car had been there 3 times in the last 2 months. Same days she claimed to be attending conferences or meeting an old mentor from school. I zoomed in on the map, staring at that blinking icon like it might confess something. Didn't, but I knew who could. I reached out to a friend, a guy I hadn't spoken to in a while who worked in hospitality services. Nothing shady, just connected. I asked him if he could pull a record, just a receipt, if possible, from the lodge's restaurant. I gave him Kayla's name, told him it was for a surprise. It wasn't a lie. She was about to be very surprised. 2 days later, he sent me a photo of a dinner bill. 2 entrees, 2 glasses of wine, a shared dessert, billed to Kayla's card. The same one tied to our joint account. The same account I had checked a dozen times thinking maybe, just maybe, I was overthinking everything. Date: April 22nd. Time: 7:48 p.m. That was the weekend she said she was going to a women's tech summit. I remember that because she made a big deal about it. Packed 3 blazers. Said she'd be networking all weekend. But the bill wasn't from a conference center. It was from a quiet candlelit dining room with a view of the cliffs. And then came the name. Not on the bill, he'd paid in cash. But she had told me the weekend before that an old college friend had reached out. Ethan. I didn't think much of it. She said it so casually. He messaged out of the blue. I hadn't talked to him in years. She said it with that tone women use when they want you to know it's not a big deal. Like saying, "Oh, I bumped into someone from spin class." She even laughed. Called him that overconfident doofus who never used a coaster. It hadn't even registered at the time. But now the memory replayed differently. I started digging. Ethan. College boyfriend. They dated before we met, apparently briefly. I never met him. I barely knew anything about him. But now I couldn't stop picturing him. I didn't even have a face to assign to the feeling. I just imagined shadows. I scrolled back through Kayla's old photos. Found a group picture from her graduation. There was a guy standing next to her, arm around her shoulders, both of them sunlit and smiling like the future had no idea what it would do to them. His name was tagged Ethan Caldwell. I Googled him. Marketing consultant. Based in state. And yes, he had posted a photo 3 weeks ago, standing on the deck of a guest lodge by the coast. Same cedar trees. Same railing. Different angle. Caption: sometimes you need to go back to old places to remember who you are. I felt sick. It was like every moment of doubt had just collapsed inward on itself and taken shape. The dinners. The retreats. The overnight trips. The makeup. The lies. Every piece of it was pointing to one truth. Kayla was having an affair. And she wasn't even trying to hide it that well. That was the part that haunted me. Not just the betrayal, but the boldness. The sheer consistency of it. Like she didn't believe I'd ever look close enough. Or worse, that she didn't care if I did. She'd used our shared card. Our car. Our past anniversary spot. It wasn't accidental. It wasn't a slip-up. It was a decision repeated so many times, I couldn't even pretend it was a mistake anymore. I remember sitting at the kitchen table that night, the receipt in front of me, her last text glowing on my phone. Running a little late. Might just crash at Lila's. That lie still warm, still fresh. I stared at it like a wound that hadn't closed yet. I opened the smart home app again. That night, the back door had opened at 1:12 a.m. The lights in the upstairs hallway turned on 10 minutes later. She had come home, moved quietly, pretended she hadn't. And I sat in the guest room, watching the dot on her car's GPS pulse like a heartbeat I didn't recognize anymore. I thought I might cry, but I didn't. I didn't feel anything, actually. Just numb. Cold in a way that didn't touch my skin but ran deeper. Like the part of me that loved her had gone silent, waiting to see what I would do next. I wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. I needed more. Not because I didn't believe it. I did. I believed all of it. But because I wanted her to see it, too. Wanted her to be unable to deny what she'd done. So I printed everything. Screensh *TS. Receipts. GPS logs. I made copies. Created a folder. Labeled it Truth for her. And then I made another one. Truth for me. That one had something extra. See, during our brief separation years ago, just before we got married, Kayla had suggested buying a summer home. Said she wanted a place we could escape to, someday raise kids. I handled all the paperwork. I paid for most of it. We agreed it would be in both our names. But she never filed her side. Said she was too overwhelmed with work at the time. Said we'd update it after the wedding. We never did. I checked the documents. Double-checked the deed. It was still under my name. Sole ownership. She hadn't followed through. And now that oversight had become my leverage. I didn't smile. Didn't gloat. But I did feel something shift. She'd taken our marriage and turned it into a fiction. A performance. A series of practiced lines. Now I was rewriting the script. That night, I opened a new email account. I didn't send anything. I just typed a draft, her name in the subject line, the evidence attached. Then I clicked save. It sat there like a loaded chamber. And still, she had no idea. But she would. Soon. Because the illusion wasn't cracking anymore. It was already shattered. I stared at Ethan's photo for a long time before I saved it. His face was tan, hair slightly tousled in that effortless way people try too hard to fake. He looked relaxed, confident, like someone who never doubted he could take what wasn't his. I wondered if he knew how obvious it all was, if he knew someone was watching, or if he, like Kayla, had mistaken my silence for ignorance. I wasn't silent because I didn't know. I was silent because I was building something. That's when I thought of his wife. I'd never met her, never even knew he was married. But when I looked up his company page, her name came up. Ellie Caldwell, communications lead at a nonprofit, based about 40 minutes from us. Blonde, soft eyes, professional smile. A photo of her and Ethan at some gala. Arm around his waist, proud expression, oblivious. It stayed with me. I debated for days before I reached out. The message was short, polite, carefully worded. I said I was reaching out regarding her husband, that I believed there may be something she'd want to know. I didn't mention Kayla yet. I included one image, a cropped version of the lodge receipt. I signed my full name and told her she could call or ignore me. No pressure. She called 32 minutes later. Her voice was calm, composed, but too steady. I could tell she'd already guessed. Maybe not the details, but the shape of it. Like me, she'd seen the changes, the deflections, the new energy that didn't quite reach home. I thought it was stress, she said after a long pause. Then I thought it was me. We met in person 3 days later, neutral location, quiet cafe by the highway. She wore black slacks and a gray wool coat. No makeup, hair pulled back. She looked exhausted. Not messy, not broken, just stripped bare. We sat across from each other and laid out our truths. I showed her the photos. She showed me texts. At first, I felt like I was reading someone else's story. Ethan had messaged Kayla under a different contact name. Marley, she said, a joke about their college days. The messages were casual but unmistakably int asterisk mate. Mentions of our place. Nicknames, and phrases like, nights like that make the rest of it worth it. She showed me a **T of a message Ethan sent the day after one of Kayla's trips. She doesn't suspect a thing. It's honestly impressive. That line stayed with me. She, meaning Ellie. But now she did suspect. Now she knew. And so did I. We weren't crying. We weren't yelling. We were documenting. Ellie had been collecting for months. She already had phone records, photos, even GPS data. She'd just never had a name to tie to the woman. I gave her that, and in return, she gave me something else. Clarity. It wasn't about making a scene. We both knew that wouldn't fix anything. This wasn't about revenge porn or dramatic Facebook posts or broken dishes in the driveway. We didn't need to scream to be heard. We needed evidence. Accuracy. Precision. We booked a rental house. Not far from the lodge. 2 stories, private, unobtrusive. The kind of place people use for anniversary getaways or team-building retreats. But we had a different purpose. I set up 2 motion-triggered cameras. One in the carport, one angled toward the lodge entrance. Ellie handled the microphone. Hidden in a vase of fake flowers that she placed near the window where their laughter always echoed. We waited. For 4 weekends, nothing. Then, on the 5th, they arrived. I watched through the screen in real time as Kayla stepped out of Ethan's car, wearing a dress I remembered. Our first anniversary dinner. Tight at the waist, soft fabric that swayed when she walked. Ethan carried her bag. They kissed in the open, casually, like people with nothing to hide. Ellie sat beside me. Her face didn't flinch. She just watched, absorbed. We didn't speak. There was nothing to say. Inside the lodge, they laughed, opened wine, played music. At one point, Kayla stepped out onto the deck, wrapped in the same throw blanket we kept at home, talking into her phone. She told someone, probably me, that the retreat was restorative and that she'd be back Sunday night. I checked the calendar. Sunday was her mom's birthday. She had said she'd be visiting. That lie, too, was now archived. The microphone picked up Ethan calling her Cakes. I hadn't heard that name in years. She used to call herself that, jokingly, when we first started dating. Said it was what her dad called her as a kid. Said it reminded her of innocence. I hadn't heard her say it since we got married. Now, it belonged to someone else. I felt something rupture inside me. Not rage. Not heartbreak. Disconnection. Like watching someone you loved slowly take off a mask you didn't know was there. Ellie leaned forward, writing something in a notebook. She had been logging everything. Times, phrases, interactions. There was a plan forming in her handwriting. "You okay?" I asked finally. She looked at me, then back at the screen. "Not really, but I will be." That night, we stayed in the rental house. Watched movies. Ate frozen pizza. Didn't talk about them. Just existed in quiet survival. 2 people tethered not by love, but by betrayal. And strangely, it was easier than being alone. The next morning, Ellie handed me a folder. She had printed everything: transcripts, screen captures, maps, itemized logs. The cover simply read, "Case file, EC plus KK." I didn't ask what she planned to do with it. I trusted her. I made my own copy. Added legal documents, ownership deeds, tax records. Proof that Kayla, through her own negligence, had left the summer home legally vulnerable. I had already filed the paperwork to transfer the deed solely to my name. No warning. No notice. She wouldn't see it coming. And I wasn't going to tell her. Not yet. Instead, I planned the rest. Not for confrontation, but for impact. Because when someone spends months building a lie, the cleanest response isn't fire. It's light. And I was ready to turn it on. There's a difference between confronting someone and cornering them. The first gives them the illusion of dignity. The second strips that away. What we were planning, Ellie and I, was not a confrontation. It was a conclusion. No arguments. No shouting matches. Just evidence. Truth served in full. They returned to the lodge on a Friday. Same as before, just past sunset. Ethan's car eased into the gravel lot like it had every other time. Like ritual. Kayla stepped out wearing a sweater I hadn't seen in months. The one she used to wear on rainy movie nights with me. Oversized and soft. Something that still smelled like our old apartment. She wore it differently now. Off one shoulder, sleeves pushed up to her elbows, paired with boots I didn't recognize. They walked in holding hands. We watched from across the street, high on the hill, behind polarized glass and pulled shades. Ellie sat next to me, her legs crossed, not moving. She hadn't said much since we arrived. Her focus was surgical. She had a legal pad on her lap, and every so often she'd jot something down. Times, details, words. Precision was her language now. From the moment they arrived, we recorded everything. Kayla put wine glasses on the counter. Same pair every visit, always red. Ethan lit the fireplace. They laughed about something we couldn't hear. Then Kayla said, clear as day, we always come back here, like it's our little time capsule. Ethan responded, no one would ever think to look here. He was right. No one would unless they'd been watching for weeks. The camera outside caught their movements. The one angled at the window caught their silhouettes. The mic, hidden in a vent outside, picked up enough to confirm everything else. Pet names, inside jokes, mentions of missed calls, excuses, plans. We didn't need more, but we kept recording. Ellie pulled out a USB and backed up the files onto 3 separate drives. One for her, one for me, one to lock in a safety deposit box, just in case. At one point, I caught my reflection in the dark glass. I didn't recognize myself, not because I looked different, but because I felt entirely still. I wasn't angry. I wasn't afraid. I was in a state I'd never experienced before. Complete clinical detachment. That night, they cooked dinner. Steak, by the look of it, and ate barefoot on the couch, her legs draped across his. The same position she used to claim she only found comfortable with me. I remembered her saying once, I can only fall asleep like this with someone I feel safe around. That line haunted me now. When the wine bottle emptied, Ethan pulled her close and said, do you ever think about just not going back? She laughed softly. Sometimes, but I don't know if I'm ready to blow everything up yet. He kissed her forehead. We recorded that, too. Ellie leaned forward then, hit pause and said, it's time. We didn't move fast. Everything was slow, intentional. She took out the folder she'd spent weeks compiling. Every screenshot *T, every log, every timestamp, including the most recent captures from just an hour ago. She sealed it in a simple manila envelope. No drama, no theatrics, just the truth, bound by paper and silence. Then we left the house. We moved quietly across the gravel road, through the trees. The wind was sharp and cold, but I barely felt it. Adrenaline carries warmth. Or maybe it was clarity. The lodge was quiet, no blinds drawn. Their laughter leaked through the window, soft, distant. We walked around back. The door was unlocked. Inside, the air smelled like cinnamon and smoke. Music played low from a Bluetooth speaker on the mantel. They weren't in sight yet. We didn't need them to be. Ellie stepped forward. She placed the folder gently on the coffee table beside a half-filled wine glass. Then she added a second item, her wedding band. She slid it off her finger with a calm I didn't think possible. No message. No words. I added mine. I had worn that ring for nearly a decade. Through every move, every holiday, every high and low, it had etched a slight line into my skin. Taking it off felt like peeling something away that had once been alive. We turned to leave. But before we did, I reached into my coat pocket and placed one final piece on the table. The original note. The one I'd found in the coat pocket weeks ago. Sunsets aren't the same without you. Let her see where it had led us. Let her hold the origin of her unraveling. We exited through the same back door, our footsteps barely audible against the wood floor. We didn't speak. No need. By the time we returned to the rental, Kayla and Ethan were still unaware. Still on the couch. Still inside their fantasy. We watched from the screen as Kayla stood to stretch, walked toward the kitchen, and saw it. The folder. The rings. The note. She froze. Her hand hovered over the envelope like she wasn't sure if it was real. She looked around the room, suddenly alert, suddenly nervous. She touched the rings, then opened the folder. Ellie watched her read the first page. watched the color drain from her face, watched the wine glass tremble in her hand before she set it down. Ethan came over, asked something. She didn't answer. Then he saw it too. I wish I could say there was some kind of cinematic climax, yelling, denial, panic. But there wasn't. Just silence. Like the room had been emptied of all oxygen. Kayla sat down slowly, still holding the papers. Her expression wasn't angry or embarrassed. It was blank, like a mirror cracking inward. Back at the rental, Ellie exhaled deeply and said, "That's enough." I turned off the screen. We didn't stay much longer. There was nothing left to gather, nothing more to confirm. What followed next would be the unraveling on their end. For us, it was already complete. On the way out, Ellie handed me her half of the drive. "You never know," she said. "People get creative when they're cornered." I nodded. I understood. Back home, I found Kayla's suitcase already packed by the door, almost like a premonition. She hadn't come back yet, but I wasn't waiting. I stacked her belongings in a waterproof container on the porch. Included a printout of the property transfer notice. Her name was nowhere on it now. Taped to the top was a short letter. 3 lines. "Your access has been revoked. The property is no longer shared. Do not return." I went to bed in silence. The house, now cleared of her perfume and presence, felt still, honest, and that silence, for the first time in months, felt like peace.